Hi, this next part, excuse me if I'm not looking at the screen, but I'm looking at a PowerPoint that I'm going to put up with the talk as well. And the PowerPoint goes through possible ways of structuring this assignment. So it's looking at a child's perception of writing. So the first slide just basically tells you what to do. So what you need to do first of all is have done all your reading and have notes on firstly the writing process and also how children perceive writing, and have that kind of, so you have that knowledge, and then look at the transcript you've got. So consider what the child says and what that tells you about, remember, their perceptions of writing. I would kind of highlight bits that you think are really good, and then you need to think about where it links to background reading. And you need to make sure that you use, I'm on slide 2 now, you need to make sure that you use examples of what the children say linked to your academic reading. For instance, you might find that your children talk a lot about spelling being really important. That's one of the themes that comes out, that when they think about what's important in writing, they say spelling and they say handwriting. So for example, you have to quote the child. Now when I say quote the child, I literally mean quote the child. So you have quotation marks, you have what the children say, and then you end quotation marks. You don't have to date it or page number or anything like that, but you then say see appendix 1 for further detail. I'm being really this specific because last year some students didn't realise that when I said quote the child, I actually meant it. And you need to quote the child in every section near enough. So you'd have the quote, maybe the child says, this is my best piece of writing because my handwriting is really neat. And so if you think about that, that tells you that their perception of writing is that handwriting is really important, and the transcription aspect. So then look in the reading that you've done and see if you can find anything that supports that is what other researchers have found. So you will find that in Ray, and you'll also find that in the Granger as well. And then you can have a little bit about why they might think that. And you can also think about how the aspects of the writing process that you know about. So you know about transcription and composition, and you'd have read a lot of other things about the writing process as well, and how we can work with children around that. So for each, you've not got huge numbers of words to play with, but for you want to break your assignment into sections around what the child says. So the child might say that they think choosing the story is really important. So the plot, the composition. So again, you'll find something in your reading about how writing for an audience is important. So they might sort of say that you have to think about who you're writing for. So again, you'll have to quote the child, talk about their actual perception, and then link it to background reading. So it says in the slide, reflect on the ways in which the child's perspective has developed your understanding of the teaching of writing. So towards the end of, so you'd have your introduction. I'll start with an introduction, a general introduction. This is about, really short, I would say, about that much, about what the writing process is and how important it is to know what children think about writing. And you'll find really good quotes in the Granger and Ray around that. And then I would have the different paragraphs on the different themes that come out from the children's writing. Remember, you need to talk to them about their home writing as well, and to get the top marks you need to have mentioned all aspects of writing, so school and home. Remember, writing can be text writing, it can be writing emails. Remember all the aspects of it, so you're looking at that. So each paragraph you will have maybe 1, 2, 3 quotes in from the child, and you'll build that paragraph around what the child's perception is linked to background reading about why they might have that perception, but also good classroom practice around it. So if you get a lot of responses saying about transcription, it may be that you have a little suggestion. Don't criticise the school, you'd maybe have a little suggestion about what schools can do so that children don't always have the perception that transcription is the only important thing. So you'd have your introduction, you'd have the paragraphs based around the themes that you find in your transcription, in your transcription, sorry, in your transcript, and then you have a final paragraph about that much, reflecting on how what you've found out will affect your classroom practice, so what you've learned. Next slide. So when you talk about the child, sorry, I'm reading from the screen, when you talk about the child, make sure you've got to include their age, gender, languages spoken, and if there's any relevant information. You don't include the child's full name. You don't include the name of the school. You can include a full transcript, and it's really good to, as an appendix, but you've got to refer directly to the child and quote them in the assignment, because when we mark as markers, we don't have to read the appendices. So if you want us to read it, it's got to be in the main body of the text. Next slide. So the assignment's focused on a conversation with one child and your school experience and their perceptions of writing. These are the key criteria. You've got to show us an informed knowledge and understanding of the writing process. Now that doesn't mean that you have different sections on the writing process. It means that during your assignment, within your assignment, you kind of have aspects that are important in the writing process. So you might have a little bit on audience linked to what the child says. You might have something on free choice, because a lot of children might not like the fact they don't get free choice, and the Ray article talks about choice, as does Playing the Games Called Writing, and the Kremin book, Creativity in Writing, Voice and Verve in the Classroom, which is another good text to read. You want to show us your knowledge of effective practices to promote writings. That will come in at the end, but it will also be weaved through. Relevant background reading. You need to have read books, and you need to have read articles, and you need them in the bibliography. We're looking to you to show you. Remember, in academic writing, if you say something, you've got to support it with academic writing. You know, reference to research journals. That's not the BBC. That's not Mumsnet. That isn't the TES. It's not the Sun newspaper, the Daily Mail. It's got to be peer-reviewed journals and books. We've given you an extensive reading list on Moodle, so have a look at that. You need to write in clear, coherent standard English. If you've got problems with writing in standard English, go down to Student Services and see if you can make an appointment for them to proofread it, and they will help you with that. Get someone else to proofread it. And you need to use Harvard referencing. Okay, so that's what the PowerPoint says. That's the end of the PowerPoint. Things that made really good essays last year, and I gave someone, I think in their 90s last year, you've got to include quotes from the child, maybe not in the introduction or the end, but in every paragraph. You've got to, and the whole thing is focused around the child. You don't kind of try and write about the writing process and put quotes from the child in to support it. You do it the other way around. So you start with what the child says, and then you link in what you have learned. I'm going to finish now, but I'm going to put a little bit on in the fourth little podcast, just about to quote some good bits of essays for you.